Okay, all right, boys, here we go. Let's get going. So I've attempted to make this demo, I don't know, 4 times already today. This is my 5th time. I don't freaking know anymore. So what are we trying to do? Here's what I came across in Air Manager, right? Here's your beautiful Air Manager. I wanted to make panels that look realistic. That's the purpose of Air Manager. And you do that. You know how to make a panel. I'm not here to teach you that. What happens is you come to the instrument panel and you say, well, I'm working on a 152. So I'm going to search 152. And here it is, right? So I need a speed. I need to know the speed. Here we go, right here. AIRSPEED. This is the one, excuse me, that I'm referring to. It's the AIRSPEED. When you plug it in, it comes in like this. It looks red on the background and super green in the gauge. So I think it's Michel Thiraud, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. Excuse me. That's the person who did it. And it looks really realistic. It looks awesome. But can you imagine a couple of these gauges side by side? All of a sudden, it's a field of red with green gauges. Just looks really odd to me. That's not what the gauge in the plane in Flight Simulator looks like. So what I'm suggesting is that we redo it, right? So I'm going to try to take you through that process today of how to redo the gauge. Let me show you. For example, when you go down in the Create Edit tab, you will find the airspeed indicator right there. It's not the indicator, it's just the airspeed. When you press run, it will make it like this, right? What I'm trying to express to you guys is the following. When I look at that gauge next to this gauge, they are not the same gauge. They're very similar, but they're not the same. So what we're here to do is to make everything extremely realistic and similar. So with that in mind, this is what I did. So what I did is I got inside a flight simulator and I thought to myself, well, what kind of gauge do you want to design? Well, I want to design a realistic one. Well, you better get it from the flight simulator. This is the part that I skipped and I don't want to do again because it took me like a few minutes to do it properly. Pick up the camera, go into Showcase, Free Camera, and then click on the drone camera. Fly the drone slowly until you get to this point. Make sure that you zoom in on it and you take a picture of it. How do we do that? We hit print screen. A couple times you can see my mouse pointer is flickering. You get it. You turn on Photoshop, or I don't know, there's Gimpy or whatever it is. There's another program out there that's being used. Control V, that's pasting it, right? We took a picture of it. We made a new canvas, file new canvas, right here. And the program already knows that, and the clipboard, which is if you have something copied from somewhere else, the program knows. So it's assuming you might want to paste that item. So click on clipboard, which I already did, which makes this huge canvas for me. Why? Well, because I have 3 screens, and you can see 1, 2, 3, triple screen setup. Then Control V, and you paste this right on. Up here in the top, we pick the elliptical marquee tool. We drag from the top. We hold Shift down. Click here in the top and just drag it. Make a circle. Make sure it's a perfect circle. Well, that circle is not as good as the gauge. So we have a marquee that's covering the gauge, but it's too big. So what are we going to do? We're going to go Select, Transform Selection, and now it allows us to mess with that selection. By holding Shift down, I can constrain this as a circle. If I don't hold Shift down, it starts to become an oval, and I don't want that. So I'm going to constrain it down like this, and now we see it's to the side. So all I have to do is let go of Shift, let go of the mouse button, and just, tap the selection over a little bit till it matches perfectly the gauge. I'm going to Control C, which is copy it, Control Shift V, and then I'm going to paste it. When I turn off the background and I turn off that image, now we're left with the gauge, and that's perfect. That's what we want right there. Then I'm going to need to crop in on this. So how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to select around the gauge, just like I did. And then I'm going to hold Control Shift I. And what that does is it reverses the selection. So now we have the gauge itself selected. If I go to the crop tool, which is right here, you see that instantly it knows I want to crop in on that because it's selected. So what the hell else is it going to want to crop? So go on it, hit enter, and we have a cropped gauge. Beautiful. And you see it's floating on a clean background because you see the little squares behind it. Now, what do we do with this? Open up your Air Manager, and let's look at it. What I suggest to you guys to do is this. Right-click on it, and clone it. When you clone it, it's going to come up with this message in where it says type. I need you to write to yourself your name or demo or whatever. I'm going to call it demo. I'm not doing that because I've done this a couple times. Well, I take that back. Here, let's do it step by step so we understand. Demo 3, because I've done this demo so many times. So I'm going to make a copy of this. Say, okay, well, where the hell did it go? I just made a copy of it. All right, that's fine. If you go up to the top, you see a demo 2, demo 3. That's the one we just made. If you right-click on it and you say run, you're just going to get Michael's to Rhodes gauge. And it looks like this. And it, like I said, I mean, it looks really cool, but I'm sorry. I'm trying to do better here, right? So what happens is we don't want to run it. What we want to do is right-click. And I found this out the other day. Open folder, not the root, but the resources. What does that mean? Well, this comes up. This folder includes the 2 images that make up that gauge. And if you double click it, it's a picture, right? It's a picture of a gauge on a red background. And it's a picture of a needle with a cap. And I'm assuming, well, not assuming, I know, this is the needle and the cap that goes right on top of the gauge. These 2 together make up that gauge. So I'm going to select both of them like this. Drag and drop into Photoshop. Don't drag into this field. Drag up at the top where it says copy. You drag it up there, it opens it up. Please know that I literally dragged them from their location in Air Manager into Photoshop. And if I go and write stupid on it, the gauge forever will say stupid in Air Manager. Anything you modify here will go into Air Manager. I want to simplify this process, so I'm leading you straight to the source. That's why I dragged it from this weird directory, Air Manager, Instruments, Open Directory, whatever. If I modify these in that Demo 3 gauge, they will be modified forever. We don't need this anymore. So now that we have it, I want to show you something. So we have this gauge too. I'm going to drag this little tab over like this. I'm going to click on the gauge as I hold Shift and drag it over to the other gauge that we're trying to modify. And, well, wouldn't you know it, it didn't come in the right way. But don't worry, we took a huge picture of this gauge. And the one in Air Manager is not so big. It's trying to be resource light. So I'm going to click on it, Control T, which is Control Transform, holding Shift, drag from the corner, and try to constrain it to the box. That's really important, and this gauge is exactly where the old gauge was. As you can imagine, the needle moves on a pivot, and that pivot is, it's all geometry, right? And so if I move this like this and the pivot is here, the needle is going to point in the wrong direction. So I like to take opacity down. And when I do that, I can see through my image down to Michael's image. And I want to align it. So basically, I'm going to use my keyboard up, down, until I feel good about this. And I just eyeballing it, and it's difficult to explain, but when I eyeball this, I'm feeling pretty good about it. What I don't like is that the edges of the circle are now outside of the box, so I'm going to go Control T and just close this puppy in a little bit. Just keep bringing it in. The image was still a little bit too big. Hit Enter. What am I looking for? I want my white to be, that's overlapping his white, to be exactly the same thickness. So I'm going to push this gauge down a little bit. I'm feeling pretty good about this at this moment. I'm going to enlarge it. So I just want to be pretty accurate because, you know, if you get this gauge wrong, you know, making this, you know, beautifully accurate visually makes no sense if it doesn't look good, right? So let's keep stretching this. Anyways, and you can mess with this for the purpose of this demo. I think I'm going to stop here. That's looking pretty good. I'm going to hit Enter. And what's the outcome? Let's get this opacity up. And what I don't like about it is it's cutting off my outer ring. So I'm going to make a copy by holding down Alt, clicking on it, and dragging up. I made an extra copy of it. Control T, and I'm going to shrink this ring around like this. So this is getting a little finicky, but what I want is a perfect nice ring also. I'm going to make that circle again. You know, I already explained how to make that circle by using the circle marquee. Select, transform selection. You know, so you guys can spend a lot of time like making sure this gauge is dead on. If it's not dead on, I'm telling you, it's not going to read properly in Air Manager, and you're always going to be a couple, you know, knots over and under, and you don't want that. So what I'm going to do is this right here, and I'm going to just delete right through. So what did I do? Well, if you notice, there was a duplicate. I made it smaller. I deleted it, and I'm keeping just the ring. Now, I don't want to see this extra ring. That's coming in from behind. I want to delete that. So I'm going to take my selection. I'm going to tell it, hey man, can you delete anything outside of that selection? What is this selection now? Well, to me, that selection is just barely capturing the other ring. So I'm going to hit enter. Control Shift I. That inverts the selection. That selects the opposite of what was previously selected. I go to that gauge right there, and I'm just going to hit delete, man. Bam. See how we deleted that? Put this ring on top. I know this might be hard to follow for some of you. You don't have to do any of the silliness with the rings. What I'm telling you is the numbers were not aligned. I aligned them. Then my border was coming off the edges. I didn't like that. And so, you know, just being completely finicky here. And I want to make sure we get a realistic looking gauge. Okay, we're feeling pretty good. Look at this. We got our gauge on top of his gauge. I'm serious. His gauge looks really good, but my goodness, man. What's up with the Grinch green, you know? Glass is green, my man, but come on, brother. So, there we go. There's our gauge. I like his background, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on his background, on his image. Click OK. Got to unlock it. Any image that's at the bottom of a layer is usually called the background. That's the thing that starts off the whole thing. Double click it. It unlocks it. Control U brings up hue, saturation, lightness. Control U, right? Control hue. That's what it stands for. We're not going to mess with the lightness. I don't know why I did that. We're going to turn down the saturation. Why? Because we don't want a red background. All right, so there we go. If we zoom out, there we go. We got a gauge. All right, now, there's a problem. The problem is, I try to describe to you guys, is that it was made up of a gauge and a needle, two different images. Here we have the needle and the gauge together. So, what we need to do is get the polygon selection tool. Allow me as I take a sip of my refreshment. And try to really... I apologize. Let's go back one step. Let's pick up that... round selection tool. Hold down shift to keep a perfect circle. Transform selection. Hold down shift again. Okay, select, transform selection. Shift, click in the corner. Holding shift constrains this to a circle. And make sure to capture just that rotating needle and cap. There we go. We got it right there. I'm feeling pretty good. Guess what? We're not capturing the needle. So, no problem. Get this polygon lasso and start clicking away slowly. Slow clicks, one at a time, like this. Just encapsulate that needle. Boom, boom, boom. Now, just quickly, Photoshop rule. Up here at the top, usually your Photoshop will come with this clicked, which is a box. Then you want a box within a box that are full. Then you want not an empty box and a full box. What this is, it says anytime I make a selection, I want to add to my selection, right? So, we have now added to that selection. We've captured this cap and the needle. Control C. Control Shift V. Whenever you hear me say Control or Control Shift, I'm pressing and holding them and adding V, C, whatever other letter to it. So, I've made a copy of it. Why did I do that? Check this out. I don't want this needle here. We need that needle floating. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to be really finicky. I'm going to pick this is a little stopper for the needle. I'm going to be that, I mean, we want to be perfect here, right? I'm going to go here on this image. I'm going to go Control Shift V. I just copied that little nipple because I want it to be that realistic. So now, polygon selection tool. You can be pretty generous about this. We're trying to delete this whole thing. So let me zoom out so you guys can see. So pretty generous. I'm going to go. Guys, I understand, you know, at the same time as I'm teaching you how to modify this, I'm throwing a lot of Photoshop at you. I have to come clean and tell you I've been doing Photoshop for over a decade or maybe 25 years at this point. So I'm a professional designer by trade, so I shouldn't be telling you that. It's just my secret. So please don't get overwhelmed by Photoshop. Just stop the video, rewind, watch it again. You have a lot on your hands if you haven't done Photoshop before. So I selected that and I don't want it. I'm going to pick this brush. I'm going to right click and pick one of these soft brushes. Pick around the color that's laying around. What do I want to replace this needle with? Well, I want this type of gray. So I hold Alt and this little picker comes up. I pick a color and I just go at it, boys. Yeah, boy. I don't like it. It's kind of green. So I go and select them around until I'm happy. There you go. Something like that. Anyways. Turn the opacity down on the brush, and I'm just going to blend it a little bit better. There we go. I'm going to pick colors that are adjacent to what I'm doing. Control D gets rid of that selection. Well, here we go, guys. That's the part that we need, right? We deleted that inner needle, right? It was underneath. So you can see it's on layer 3. We made that little patch. Well, guess what? Feeling pretty confident at this point. I like to call it smashing layers together. You click on the layer that's on top of the one you want to smash to. These two need to smash together. I'm going to click on layer 3. Control E smashes them down. I always call it smashing down. A little sippy of my brewski. And now, remember, we still have the needle because I copied it. So, hell yeah, brothers. And check me out. When I look at this needle, I can see through it to these numbers, but the reality is I can't see through it. Here's what's happening. It's stuck to it. I need to create a window. What do I mean by that? Look at his needle. Go back to his needle. Do you see that he has a window cut through? That's crucial. That is where the equivalent mile per hours show through. So what you do is, remember, we don't need this anymore. This is the image we got from Flight Simulator. We shut that down, and we carefully get our polygon tool, which is right here, and just go through it lightly and carefully and just select that window. We don't want these numbers. This is from the game. We go in like this. And there we go. We hit delete and she gone, son. If you know what I'm talking about, she gone. And when I turn off the gauges, you can see through it. I deleted all the way through it. Now, here's the killer part. Here's where Michel Thureau was really, really on top of his game. Forgive my sniffles. It's allergies. He has a drop shadow. You can see a shadow at the bottom and shadow through the window. He knows what he's doing, and we appreciate Michel Thureau for this. What we need to do is create a shadow on this. So what I'm going to do, I've taught you before. You hold down Alt, you click on layer 2 and hold it down and drag it. You're going to duplicate this layer. Here we go. Layer has been duplicated. We have 2 of them. Turn off the top one. The one underneath is identical, so nothing's going to happen. Click on it. Control U. Make this completely dark, like this. Lightness. Brother lightness and brother darkness. You know what I'm talking about? Turn it all the way down to black. Say OK. And I need this to become a shadow. There's many ways to do this, but this is my fun way. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. An option comes up. How many pixels you want this to blur across? It all depends on what you're doing. I'd like to say about 2.9 pixels. There you go. I go OK. And see how blurry and awesome it got? Turn on the needle on top of it, and wouldn't you know it, we have a shadow. Check this out. If I turn it on and off, you see that? It's like a little shadow. But Michel Thureau, who made the original gauge, is not stupid. He knows what he's doing. You click on that shadow. You go on your keyboard up and up and down, left and right arrows, and you click down twice and a little bit to the right. Why is that? It's a little trick designers do. We know that the sun is always above us, right? And what we mean by that is like the sun's not never below you. It could be in front of you at sunrise or sunset, but it's usually the human eye perceives the sun as always being above. So anything that has a shadow should cast down into the left, down into the right. Most designers choose down into the right. Don't ask why. So what I did is I moved that shadow. You see it? Watch me move it. You see that? There you go. It's casting a shadow. Now, when it rotates, if this needle rotates all the way around, it will rotate with that shadow, and everything I said won't add up anymore. But it doesn't matter. Just go with it. Smash it down. We're feeling pretty confident. Control E. Smash down into one image. If I turn it off, this is one image. Great. We have a needle. That sounds really horrible. Now, what do we want to do? The needle, remember, cannot be here. We just went through all this work to remove that needle. Now we have it here. It's like, well, what the hell, man? You didn't want it. Go to a square selection tool. Drag from the top down. Select the whole damn square. Make sure it's all of it. Control C on layer 2, which is this needle. Go over to your needle PNG, which we opened up from, remember, from Air Manager. If you're joining late, remember where we go back and watch it there. All right. Control Shift V. And we paste it. We paste it right on top. Well, check this out, right? That's his, that's mine. Well, here's the thing. What's happening is this needle is supposed to show letters underneath and numbers. I mean, numbers, right? Equivalent to miles per hour, equivalent to knots. The problem is I deleted those. I don't have those, actually. Sorry, I misspoke. So what I'm going to do is get my little selection tool, my round one. I'm going to start off here in the corner holding Shift down, and I'm going to select this much of the old gauge. I'm going to go Control C, Control Shift V, and I pasted that portion. There it is right there. I'm going to drag it on top of my gauge, turn my gauge on, and say, well, okay, cool, yeah, I guess, but like, I don't know, man. That ain't it, And what I mean by that is like, it's like, I don't know, it's got scratches on it and it's gray and whatever. So I'm going to zoom in on it. I'm going to get my magic wand selection tool. Make sure the tolerance is pretty low because I want it to be a really good selection. I click on this gray. Oh, we're in the wrong layer. I click on this gray. Oh, and it's doing pretty good. I mean, it's selecting what I want. Bam. I see a few stragglers. I click on them. We're good, son. Boom. Hit delete. She gone. Control D gets rid of that selection, and there we go. We have this, but instantly I notice something. It's extremely crisp, and these are a little bit more blurry. So, filter, blur, but this time we're just going to go with a tiny blur. If you do that, oh, look at that. Just a little bit of blur. That looked really cool, right? Control U brings up. Here we go. Control U brings up this hue saturation box. I'm going to slide this down. Look what we're doing. We're making these a little darker, just like the rest of the numbers. That feels pretty good, right? Then let's test it. Let's put the needle on top. It's no good. So what's happening? Our needle is a little bit bigger. His numbers are a little bit smaller. And see how it's just not working. So what is one to do? Trust me on this one. You cannot, absolutely do not move those numbers. Select that layer. Control T, and I want you to hold Alt and Shift will constrain it to grow concentric from its center. And you're growing it. Remember, Alt and Shift together as you drag on this corner. Now we've grown it, and here we are. That feels pretty good. Hit Enter, and what do we have here? That looks pretty good, guys. The only thing that bothers me is like I can tell there's a bit more space here at the top than there is at the bottom. That tells me the needle's not centered. So let's test a few things real quickly, right? It goes like this. We know we didn't move his numbers. We grabbed them and maintained his centered. So what is actually happening here? What's happening is I think the needle is a little bit too high. I'm going to click on the needle, and I hate to do this. This is scary. I told you, don't ever mess with the pure center of these things. Otherwise, they will not rotate properly, and Air Manager. And what I mean is it will rotate, but it won't be accurate. So here we go. I moved it down just a little bit. But remember, we don't need the needle here. It's just for reference. So I'm going to turn it back up all the way like this. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to get my square selection tool, drag from the top, pick it all, Control C, and then I'm going to go to this layer, and I'm going to go Control Shift V, and it will paste another one. You can see it's a little bit lower than the first one, and that's on purpose because we just moved it, right? So delete the old one, which is underneath. It's gone. And now we have one. There we go. So we don't need it here anymore, so we're just going to delete it. So, feeling pretty good. Let's check. What else are we missing? For some reason, it looks like we lost that little stopper, so we're going to just use our little marquee. Control C, turn our gauge back on. Control Shift V. Oh, come on now. All right, let's do it again. Control C, and then go back to our gauge and paste it on. I like that little stopper. I think it's a little raggedy compared to everything else, so I'm going to go filter, and I'm going to blur it just a little bit. There you go. What else is missing? Let's see. I'm doing a little bit of a test here just to make sure. I'm looking for the center of this image. Feeling pretty damn good. Feeling pretty good, guys. That's the center of the image. All right, I'm going to mash it down. I'm going to mash those numbers down into the gauge, and I'm going to mash the little stopper at the top. And finally, I think that's it. So we have a gauge, guys. I know you're not going to believe me, but we're almost there. So you can stop here. I'm gonna go and explain something again, and I know it's going to be over, just too much, but I opened up this gauge from here directly. I found out where it was. If I save it right now, and I can't say this enough, you'll overwrite that gauge. But that gauge is a clone, which is fine. It's got that little icon of a man. That means it belongs to you. So yeah, I don't think you can overwrite these gauges. And if you can, whatever, you can just re-download the program or something. But I'm telling you, if I hit save right now, this is a done deal. So I modified the gauge, and I'm modifying the needle. So I think we're done, guys. So check this out, right? I'm going to smash, what I call smash this down. So Control E, and done. It's one layer. I'm going to hit Control Save. And on this one, I'm going to delete his old needle, which is fine. We appreciate Michelle Thoreau. And I'm going to delete it. She's gone. And now we keep ours. Now, I'm going to hit Save. Those images have just been overwritten. Clone Demo 3 is where we started. We clicked right-click, Open Folder, Resources. I'm going to go back. This comes up. Look at this. We just overwrote it. We did all that work in, what is it? How long has it been, guys? How long has it been? I don't even know at this point. Oh, getting carried away. 32 minutes. All right. Anyways, so we just overwrote it. And now if I turn on Air Manager, which is right here, and I play this gauge, I'm going to hit run. Guess what? There it is. There's our needle on top of our gauge. Guys, this is it. Listen, I'm going to take you to part 2 right now. This is advanced shit. Okay, this is the kind of stuff I'm into. You're talking about reality? I want to take you to level 59. You know what I'm talking about? This is level 2. Check this out. Some of these gauges have a layer called glass or reflection. And what that is like someone said, yo, it's a gauge, there's a needle, and then there's a piece of glass on top of it, right? Well, I get that. But this gauge doesn't have that. So I'm about to take you to level 59. Check me out. I have made many gauges before, so I'm cheating right now. I've made many gauges for Sim Dashboard, which I want to teach you guys also. Somewhere in there, I have all of these things. What this is, if I open it, is a circular picture of two dudes flying in a plane. I forget what kind of plane it is. I don't know, some Ovation or something. This dude's really famous on YouTube, and it's pretty awesome. Him and his buddy are flying. I took a picture of his YouTube video. I warped it to a circle, because you see how it's a little fish-eyed, and then I blurred the crap out of it. This is also a transparency. I'm going to take that from my folder. I'm going to drag it on top of my gauge. Check me out. Watch this. So again, guys, if you're fast forwarding and you ended up on this part of the video, I'd highly suggest you rewind. You don't want to be doing this. This is too advanced at this point. Or if not, man, holla at your boy. I'll teach you more stuff. You drag it on top, and wouldn't you know it, it constrains itself perfectly to the square, because it itself is a perfect circle, which can be made into a perfect square. Hit enter. We lay it down. Now we got a piece of glass of two dudes on top of a gauge. Ha, looking sexy as fuck. But I don't like it, man. It's too bright. It's taking over the whole gauge. So I'm going to smash it down a little bit. I call it smashing it down. You see, I mess with this opacity layer. I think this feels pretty good. What I don't like about it is that the glass goes on top of the trim ring. You see the ring right here? So what I'm suggesting is we need to resize it. Control T allows me to modify the shape. But Alt-Shift, hold down Alt-Shift, drag from the top, it constrains its center. So we're going to keep dragging until we're happy with it. And that feels pretty good to me. I don't like what's happening here. It's overriding the circle, whatever, man. I'm going to smash it over to the side a little bit. I don't know, man. That feels pretty good. It's a little too bright. I'm going to crush it down. All right. Now we have a reflection on top of a gauge. Control E, smash it down, baby. Smash it down. So what do we got? We have a reflective gauge, but check me out, right? This one things get real nerdy. If I grab this and I hold shift and I drag it on top, it's like, yo, you just said you want to be realistic, but how come you made a reflection? Now the needle floats on top. Yo, that's so whack. It's like the needle's on top of the glass. I know. I got yous, homies. I got yous. Control Z, or, you know, step backwards. I can take that reflection from over there. I can take it, hold shift down, and drag it on top of the needle. Now, guys, I know, I'm not stupid. This is not, you know, needles don't have reflections like this. What happens is this gauge does not have an additional layer. Okay, that's what you need. You need an additional layer of glass. So whoever made this gauge didn't make that layer. So I'm trying to fake the process. So you can see, I don't know if you guys can see it, you can tell that it's kind of hazy here. It's floating on top of the needle, but it's over everything else. I need it to be just on the needle. Check this out. Hold down Alt. Hold it down. And take your cursor in between the two layers. And this little thing comes up. This like freaking black arrow. Click it. What just happened? It told this layer, hey, this layer needs to be only where the needle image was before. So now we have a reflection here. Watch me turn it on and off, right? Off, on, off, on. You can see there's a bit of reflection of those dudes. And there's a couple of things I can get into, but like I didn't change the shape and size of it. Why? When I smash it down like this, and I grab this, I hold shift and I grab it. Remember, hold shift, and that helps you put it right on top of the center of that gauge. So there it is. All right, that feels pretty good. Look at that. So it's got the same reflections and everything. The reason I hesitated for a moment, guys, you have to be really careful with positioning these gauges right on top of where they used to be. I can tell my gauge is a little wacky. I've done this at least 5 times already, so I'm not going to sit here and spend 49 minutes aligning the gauge. I've taken you through that step. Take your time. Take your time. I can't say that enough. So we have it, but we don't need it. Remember, we got to keep it separate. Control E and save. Go back to the needle. Control S, save. Right, file, save. Go back to the gauge, file, save. Okay, now we've overridden that gauge inside Air Manager. The distractions are super strong today, friends. All right, so remember, when we first ran it, it didn't have a reflection. It looked like this, but we're going to stop it, and we're going to run it again. Look at this. It's got a reflection, boys. Yeah! Anyways, all right, so I'm going to shut down Air Manager. So every time you do modifications like this, highly recommend that you shut down Air Manager. And we're going to test our work, man. We did it. Boys, we did it. Well, as you can tell, I've done it once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times. So I'm getting a lot faster at making these. All right, now I'm going to shut down Air Manager. We no longer need these because we saved them. And if you guys are patient enough, we're going to start the long, I call it the long journey of starting Flight Simulator. All right, I want to make sure all my other software is running so I can actually fly this plane. We're not going to fly. We're just going to give you a little demo that the gauge works. Guys, if you're watching this after, I know not a lot of people watched it live because I'm a loser and I don't have a lot of followers. If you found this useful, just comment, man. Comment below. It helps in many ways. It helps with the algorithm. I get more viewers and more, my videos get spread around. But the thing that matters the most is, I know that I did the right thing and you guys want more of it, and I can spend my time the right way teaching you guys stuff. So here we are. There's the gauge that we were trying to duplicate. And I'm going to start Air Manager. And here it is, right? So I have it a position like this on purpose just to show you guys, I have it over my plane. I usually have it on a fourth screen. So I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to, leave this gauge up because I need you guys to see it. And I'm going to delete, this is one of my older ones I made. I'm going to add this new gauge. I'm going to add this instrument. And it is Demo 3. Now, do you see that it's still red? And this really confused the crap out of me. What happened is we did not update the thumbnail, which I'll do in a moment here. We didn't update the thumbnail, which really confuses people, right? Whenever the thumbnail is updated, then it shows you what it's going to look like. So we click on it, double click, and we added it. There we go. And even here, right, it's like, yo, you said you're going to do something, and you didn't do anything. You gave us the same gauge. I'm like, yo, chill, right? So here's the old Michael Thoreau on this side. Here's mine. When I run it, check this out. You see that? That's my gauge up in the corner. That's his gauge on the side, right? And that's an older gauge. That's another one that you can pick. So what's the point of all of this? All right, let's get going, guys. All right. Power in. Release the brakes. I can't really see where I'm going. The plane's actually flying right now. We're going down the runway. Let's see. Airspeed is alive yet? Nope, not yet. There we go. Airspeed is alive. And there we go. Boys, what can I tell you? Look at our gauges. Aren't they beautiful? This gauge looks a lot more like this gauge than the old one. Again, we're not picking on the guy who made it. We love him, right? Because he got us this far. I'll be honest with you, I don't know how to make a gauge from scratch. I'm sure I can learn, and that's fine. I'm sure we can all learn. But look at this, boys. It works, right? Side by side, right? And I want to point something out. Look at the numbers. See how they're different? See how it's pointing at different places? This is what I mean. I'm telling you, you better align your stuff properly. You're going to regret it, boys. But for the purpose of this demo, I went pretty fast in making it. So go back through it and figure out how to do this the right way. With that said, remember, the thumbnails are whack, right? We got to fix the thumbnail. So let's do that real quick, and I will leave you guys alone. So let's shut it down. Shut down Air Manager. Shut down the game. Let's get our Photoshop up and popping. Guys, it will mean a lot to me if you make some comments and you say, hey, yeah, this really helped, or hey, that's kind of stupid. Stop making stupid videos. Whatever you need, man, just write it in the chat. I listen to you guys, you know. So what we want is we need to create that thumbnail. And I'm going to show you right now where that thumbnail actually lives. Open up Air Manager. Oh, and you can see that it's actually opening up instantly. We got to shut down the game. There we go. So I just shut down the game. All right, make sure to open up Air Manager. We need to make a thumbnail. Remember, it was the Create tab, AIRSPEED Clone Demo 3. Again, if you're just joining, I made this gauge kind of a few times already. Go down to AIRSPEED Clone Demo 3, right click, menu comes up, open folder, resources. Actually, root, I apologize, root, right? So we're going to do it again. We're going to right click, open folder, root. And this comes up, right? What this is like the library, the resources, which we saw, but there it is. The preview lies right there. And when you open it, it looks like this. So it's like, yo, but that's no good. I don't want that. So we need to modify this file. You grab it and you drag it into Photoshop. It opens up like this. Now we go inside resources and we find the gauge that we made. We grab both of them. And guess what? I'm going to drag and drop them like this, right on top of this gauge. Boom. Hit enter to acknowledge that that's where you want it. Hit enter for that. Acknowledge that's where you want it. Done. Then, what did I teach you? Smash it down, boys. Smash it down. Control E. Oh, these layers are not rasterized. It's a long explanation. So what you can do is by holding Shift down, you click on that and this. Control E and you smash those together. Then Control E and you smash them together again. So now that's it. We just made a preview. Control S. If you save it, there we go. Control, go up to the top, save. There's the preview. You just want to save it. It's going to say, do you want to overwrite it? Hell yeah, I do. You goddamn right I do. So there it is. Boom. Shut it down. Let's give Photoshop a break. Always, every time you make a change like this, guys, I highly suggest just shut down Air Manager. Let's go back into it, right? We just shut it down, open it back up, and let's see it. There you go. See the preview updated immediately. So, guys, there it is. 47 minutes of your life just went by. We changed this gauge into this gauge and made it identical to the one in the game. If you guys like this and you want similar demos to be done, I can't wait to show you. There's so many cool things. There's a sim dashboard out there. There's so many gauge programs. I definitely want to show you some stuff. While I have you captive, I'm going to share something with you. For example, I've made gauges like this for the 172, and you can see a lot of these gauges I get online. I actually study until I find the right pictures, authentic pictures of actual gauges, and I copy them. I make the needles. Look at this. I get pretty silly with it. So I even make the little nuts and bolts and everything. So speaking of, because I'm so nerdy and I can't stop right now, actually, let's go back and add those bolts. Let me just give you a little bonus here, right? Bonus time. Bonus time. Go back into resources, find those files, open up your Photoshop again, which we left running. Drag and drop both of them. And check this out. This is going to be so easy. Because I already have these nuts and bolts made. I'm going to grab it. I'm going to drag it onto here. And when it goes on, it's huge. So holding Shift, I'm going to shrink it down till it looks like this. I'm going to move it up. Just randomly to a corner like this. I'm going to hold down Alt, which allows me to copy it. I'm going to move it over. Boom. I'm going to smash the both together. Now I have two in one file. You see that? In one layer. I'm going to hold down Alt and drag down. I'm going to make two more. Check this out. Check me out, boys. So now I have 4 bolts. I'm going to smash those down. And there's something weird, right? Like, we're talking about realism. How real do you want to be, right? And I think this is not realistic enough, boys. There's something odd about it. I'm going to go Control U. And I'm going to darken them just a little bit. I also don't think they have shadows. Another way to do shadows, and I already showed you guys this, I'm going to show you a different way. Double-click this layer. This menu comes up. Layer Style. Well, I want to drop shadow. I click that on. Then when I click here, it brings up the extra menus. Distance, I don't want it too far. Size, let's knock it down a little bit. What did I tell you earlier? Shadows go down and to the right. That's what we chose to do, right? So let's do that. Down and to the right. So this little thing, rotation right here, if you grab onto it and you move it with your mouse, it's like a little clock. So the angle of the sun should be from the top corner down to the bottom corner, like that. Look at that. So now we have shadows. Beautiful. Look at this. Would you look at this? There you go. I think the shadows are a bit harsh. So what I'm going to do is double click again, go to my drop shadow, and go opacity. That's how harsh is that shadow. I'm going to turn it down a little bit. Say okay. I'm feeling pretty good, guys. I'm going to smash that down onto the background. I'm going to hit save. And now this gauge has nuts and bolts, right? I'm going to shut it down. Shut it down. All right. Now, let's open up Air Manager, which are still running. Shut it down. Again, shut it down. Anytime you make a change like this to a gauge, you got to shut down Air Manager and just go back into it. Turn on Air Manager. We're not going to update the thumbnail. Who the hell cares if the thumbnail has or doesn't have bolts in it? So right now it looks like this doesn't have bolts, but when I go run, right, when I run it, boys, wouldn't you know it, it's got nuts and bolts. Hey, anyways, I really hope that you guys like this. I hope that it made sense to you. I really love to hear back from you guys. If you want more demos, I do a lot of this. I do this for a living. Been doing this Photoshop for 25 years. So I think I'm pretty good at it. So if you guys want to learn more, holler at your boy. Love you guys. See you soon.